All right, here is another video in my artifact exploration series. In this activity or this practice, you are going to be choosing anywhere from 3 to 8 cards from any type of deck that you want. In this case, I just picked up this Oracle deck. So we'll see how this goes. It'll be interesting because this deck has, it's very people-y. So the way that this works is you will choose your deck and then you're going to pull, a certain number of cards, like just again, like I said, 3 to 8. You can choose these randomly or deliberately. For this demonstration, just to keep it kind of brief, I did one where I chose 8 cards. I'm going to do a mix of 3 random and then 3 deliberate. So random, got this, 2, 3, and then when I choose deliberately, you can certainly go through and look at each card in your deck. For me, I just kind of go through until I see something that resonates, and I am not really looking at because this is an Oracle deck, it has words on it, but I'm not really looking at those. I'm just really kind of going through this fairly quickly, and just I'm gonna stop, when something catches my attention for whatever reason. I'm not gonna like go through the whole deck and then come back to something. Just looking for my final card here, something that catches my attention. Okay, all right. So you can also choose cards from multiple decks. So if you want to do, some from an Oracle deck, some from a Tarot deck, that's totally fine as well. Really, it doesn't necessarily matter how you choose the card, just choosing it in a way that really works for you. So I'm going to lay them out. Really, anyway, doesn't necessarily matter too much. I'm going to move this out of the way. Although I will keep these out because I'm going to use them in a second. Let's see. Okay, I have my 3 cards out here. And this is something that if I, was really doing this for my own self right now, or when I did do this, I kept a journal and I just noted, the deck that I used, what I pulled, and then I have a lot of questions in my document. And I just jot down my answers to the questions. And again, if you're interested, this is all in the Kept for a Reason PDF guide that's available. If you want to purchase it, just go ahead and send me an email. But first, before I get into it too much, I'm just going to notice, which card first catches my attention. Like when I look at them all laid out in front of me, which one do I notice first? And then I would write that down. Which card, which image feels familiar? Write that one down. Which card feels unexpected? Which one feels like it has been waiting? What images, colors, symbols, or themes appear, right? There's a lot of white space in like more than half of these cards, right? So that just very off the bat catches my eye. What feels connected? Right, this has some elements of nature. This has some elements of nature. And what feels in tension, right? Are there any of these cards that feel in tension with each other? Okay. And then the next step is to start to kind of explore the relationship among these 6 images. Like, what is the story that seems to be emerging? Because these are all, like I said, people-y, all female, right? Maybe these are all characters in a story. So like, what's kind of a larger story that would fit all 6 of these as kind of characters? What is the conversation happening between them, right? And it doesn't have to be super deep. I mean, you can think about it if like these 2 people were in a grocery store, like what would they start talking about with each other, right? Or if these 2 people are part of some kind of a club, like what's the club? What do they talk about, right? It can just be very mundane, right? Thinking about themes, images, or questions that are starting to come up for you as you're kind of deepening into this process. And then thinking about what is only visible, or what are you only aware of once you see all 6 or however many cards you're using together, right? And then now thinking about, this is a little bit about going more into kind of like the role that these different cards are starting to play, right? So which card feels like the thing that has endured, right? Because the theme of these whole explorations is like kept for a reason. So which card feels like the one who has endured, right? I mean, to me, this one kind of does, because like she's rooted. There's like all this like older growth coming out of her. This one looks, in comparison to this card, right, which looks like a little bit more new growth coming. Which card feels like the keeper? And it could be the same one, right? You can, there's like not a right way to go about this. Which card feels like the memory? Which card feels like the part of yourself that has survived change? And maybe which card feels like something you are ready to recognize? And then now this is where we're starting to turn and bring this a little bit more personal, right? So staying with the idea of kind of this like landscape or this field, it almost has a little bit of an RPG kind of quality to it. It's almost like you're creating this like map, you're putting this like map together, thinking about the world that these cards exist in, right? And so thinking about what part of that landscape or world feels the most alive to you. Like what part of this kind of landscape of these 6 cards, where's the energy for you, right? For me, it kind of feels like this like butterfly, this part of like this image, right? What place or figure or object or symbol, right, depending on the type of imagery that you're using, keeps drawing you back. What is it? What do you feel curious about? What do you want to move closer to? What do you want to move away from? What part of the scene feels the most meaningful to you? If that landscape, and when I say landscape, I mean, depending again on what your imagery is, both like the actual landscape that's kind of there. Actually, you know, it's almost like, again, these 4 are white, you know, kind of ethereal, and these 2 seem a little bit more like grounded, right? And so even just playing around with how you have your cards and your images arranged, right? Even though this looks like kind of new growth, based on it being above in this like ethereal plane, it starts to kind of take on this like idea of it being like the spirit of growth. Whereas these are more grounded in like the earthly plane. These are more in like the ethereal world. I don't know. That's just like, right? That's not something that I sat down and thought of when I first pulled these cards, but as I'm like and I'm just talking through this process, right? I'm not even really kind of like going deeply in it, but it just kind of, this like arrangement just occurred to me. And when I did that, I started to see a different relationship start to form in the moment, right? All right, so kind of exploring the landscape. You know, what do I want to move away from? What part of the scene feels the most meaningful to me? Right? And it could be the relationship, right? It could be the relationship between these 2 cards, all right? The ideas or themes in these 2 cards, right? If the landscape had a message, you know, what would it want me to notice? What quality does this landscape hold? Is it, you know, strength, mystery, protection, adventure, grief, transformation, belonging, etc.? It's almost like a theme, you can think about it. And like, what is present here that feels important? And notice again, you know, these are oracle, right? So I haven't even really looked at what these different, the cards are. You certainly can, right? That could really be some really interesting information to draw from too. And then now we're going to start to kind of, again, beginning to make that resonance or our personal connection to the cards a little bit more explicit, right? So what feeling in this landscape feels the most familiar, right? Kind of noticing where feelings, different types of feelings that might be represented or portrayed. what does it remind you of, right? So to me, this really kind of reminds me of this like pantheon of like goddesses in like the ethereal spiritual plane and like life on earth. So that's kind of getting into some kind of more spiritual, I guess, ideas, right? Does this connect to a memory that you have, a dream, a story, right? So, I mean, this could even start to go into stories of, you know, fairy tales, gods and goddesses, those kinds of things, maybe a person, a place, or some other type of feeling that you had. Have you encountered something like this? Is there a quality here that you recognize in yourself, and what is it? What personal meaning does this image hold for you, right? These are all females or female presenting folks. So that can certainly affect the meaning that it would have. If I were in this scene, if I were a character in this scene, who would I be? So that's certainly something that you can ask yourself and just answer. You could also, you know, go through your deck, this deck, the deck that you're using, or like a different deck. I've made a bunch of different types of little archetype cards that I like to use for stuff like this when I'm playing around with archetypes or characters or roles. So for this one, I would just grab my little archetypes deck, and I would probably deliberately go through my deck and look for who I would be, my role in this field, in this landscape, right? I'm goddess, right? I'd probably be another goddess. I'd probably be some kind of a goddess in this scene. And where would I be here? Where would I be? You know, maybe I'm a goddess that's like in the earthly realms, right? I'd be like right there. What role would I play? You know, would I be like a trickster of some kind? Like what role would I have here? Like, how would I interact in this place? What is it that I would be carrying or protecting or seeking or discovering? What would I need? Right? And again, this is kind of really making it personal, but also a little bit fictional and playful, right? Because this is an imaginary scenario. And what might I discover? Like, what might I discover in this role as goddess in this scene? Okay. And then kind of, again, stepping back from the exploration and thinking about, you know, what in that whole process felt worth preserving or feels worth preserving in some way. What did I notice that I want to remember? What part of myself feels recognized here? What part of the landscape feels like it belongs with me? What am I being invited to remember? What feels worth honoring? What do I want to carry forward? And what might I be ready to see differently? And then again, if you've watched my previous videos, you know I always like to end with kind of a containing capture. So kind of from this whole exploration is choosing something to carry with you, right? So maybe it's a word, a phrase, a question, maybe it's just a color, right? You know, white was very big here. I also really just like this green or the blue. Maybe if you like sketching, you can like draw something, a doodle, maybe it's just a symbol, or even a sentence, right? The idea is just kind of consolidating and containing in what this whole exploration was into something that kind of represents what you discovered from it, kind of like a very succinct summary. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in purchasing my the guide for Kept for a Reason, you can certainly email me, and I can send you that PDF download. If you want to kind of go more into the exploration in a guided way, you can reach out to me, and I offer support exploring through my guided artifact exploration sessions, where we begin with an artifact that feels meaningful for you. This again is specifically for the Kept for a Reason artifact exploration. I'm going to do other different practices related to other types of themes, so we can kind of figure out which theme you would like to explore. And I have, again, lots of different ways that I go about guiding someone through that actual process one-on-one. So thank you, and be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos on creative self-exploration.